Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a religious lecture from speaker M.R. Abdullah, and he frames the relationship between God and humanity in a pretty unique way, as a boss and an employee. So let's break down this powerful metaphor and see how it builds an entire worldview step by step.
Right off the bat, this is the core of the whole message, this one single idea. The entire relationship between God and us is seen through this lens of a workplace. You've got an employee and you've got the ultimate boss. And really, everything else in the lecture is built on this foundation.
So first, we really have to wrap our heads around this foundational argument. The whole point of the lecture is that if you can just accept this one premise, that there's a supreme, all-encompassing boss, then everything else about our place in the universe just logically falls into place.
The logic here is super direct, it's powerful. Creation implies ownership. The argument goes like this: if a being created the entire universe, then that being, by default, owns all of it. This isn't really presented as something you can debate. It's just a fundamental fact of existence that gives the boss total authority.
Okay, so if we're working with this idea of a boss, well, what kind of boss are we talking about? To really understand where this ultimate authority comes from, the lecture goes into detail about the specific qualities of the creator.
So the lecture lays out a few key characteristics. First, the creator is uncreated, meaning it exists outside the whole cycle of cause and effect. It's supernatural and unimaginably powerful, the source of literally everything. But here's what's really important. The speaker makes a point to pair all that absolute power with the quality of being extremely merciful.
Now, the lecture has a very specific definition for the word supernatural. We're not talking about ghosts or magic here. In this context, it means being the one who actually wrote the laws of nature. The creator isn't limited by physics, it created physics. This puts that being completely outside the system it designed, giving it, total control.
And this quote just perfectly captures the sheer scale of that power. The speaker points to the just mind-blowing vastness of the cosmos. Trillions of stars, billions of galaxies, and says, yep, that's the work of the creator. The whole argument is that this level of power is way beyond anything we can truly wrap our minds around.
So this leads to the next logical question in the argument, right? If the creator is this all-powerful supernatural owner, then what are we? What's our role in all of this? And the answer the lecture gives is very direct, and it clearly defines our position in this cosmic hierarchy.
The power dynamic is laid out as this really clear contrast. On one side, you have the uncreated owner, and on the other, you have the creation. And the lecture uses a very specific, very intentional word for us, the creation, the slave. This isn't just a metaphor. It's meant to be the literal description of the relationship.
Now, I know what you're thinking. That word slave carries some seriously heavy negative weight. But the speaker completely reframes it here. From this point of view, being a slave to the creator is actually presented as a great honor. The logic is that the creator could have made us into something lesser, like ants or worms, but chose to give us our human form. So in that context, this status is seen as a gift.
Okay, so if our position is slave to the boss, then the lecture addresses our purpose. Why are we here? The argument is that our existence isn't just random. It's actually framed as a divine test, a kind of final exam with absolutely eternal stakes.
The speaker breaks this earthly examination down into four main stages. First, we're given life. Second, and this is a really key part of the test, we're given free will. We get to choose our own path. Third, guidance is provided, and that guidance is presented as Islam. And finally, there's a judgment day where we have to face the consequences of those choices.
And it's really important to understand the lecturer's take on this guidance. It's not presented as just one of many valid paths you could take. No, the speaker is very explicit. In this divine test, Islam is framed as the single correct answer sheet. It's the truth that the creator provided to help you pass the exam. And this brings us to the final part of the whole argument, the consequences. I mean, if life is a test, there has to be a score at the end, right? There are outcomes for passing or failing. And the lecture lays out a very clear, very binary set of results based on the choices you make in life.
So when you look at this whole framework, an all-powerful but merciful creator who gives you the correct guidance to pass a test and get into paradise, it poses a really big question. Why would anyone choose to reject this? Why would someone knowingly fail the test? Well, the speaker's answer really comes down to human character flaws. He says the reason people reject the creator is because of arrogance and ignorance. It's basically presented as a misuse of that free will they were given for the test.
People are free to choose the wrong path, but that choice is framed as being a result of their own pride.
And so, everything builds up to this final binary outcome. The lecture lays out two totally different paths. Path 1 is submission. The speaker defines that as living as a Sunni Muslim, obeying the Creator. The outcome, paradise. Path 2 is rejection, which means following other beliefs and being ungrateful. The outcome, hellfire. The choice and its consequences are presented as incredibly stark and absolute.
And that brings us to the end of our breakdown. We've walked through this whole worldview that defines the Creator as the ultimate boss, humanity as honored slaves, and our lives as a very high-stakes exam. The entire framework is built on a foundation of absolute certainty, which leaves us with a final question to think about. What are the implications of building a worldview on a test that has only one right answer?